Hey guys, Rachel from Past Building Consultants here. Today I'm going to rattle through 5 reasons why I'm a massive advocate for external composite timber frame. First one, energy efficiency. This is probably the biggest one because over the lifetime of a home, if you've got a higher energy rating overall, then it's going to save you a lot of money year on year on year. And having an external wall, because it's such a big surface area and it's exposed to the elements, having that insulated timber frame is going to perform better long term than a blockwork wall will under normal circumstances. Obviously you can design a blockwork home and create other elements that will perform better, but if you're just looking at a timber frame wall compared to a blockwork wall in terms of its passive design and solar gain, then really a timber frame is going to perform extremely well. A blockwork wall is going to act like a heat sink and radiate heat back into the house if the sun has been hitting that wall. If the sun is hitting that timber frame wall in the same way, that timber frame wall, as long as it's insulated, is not going to be radiating anywhere near the kind of heat that a blockwork wall will. So energy efficiency is a massive one. I've saved so much money over the years living in this home for 8 years, and one of the main reasons for that is the external structure, and the big part of that, of course, is the wall. Secondly, it's a sustainable resource. Now, obviously not all timber is sustainably sourced, but generally speaking, construction timber is from FSC accredited sources, and if you're not sure, then I'd be certainly asking to make sure that it is. And these sources are from managed forests, so they replenish the trees, and it can be replaced. Obviously, if you're digging something from out of a quarry, you can't, unless you're recycling those materials, then it's a little bit harder to say that it's a sustainable resource. Number 3, carbon footprint and life cycle costings. This is where I think timber trumps steel. So steel frame can be a really good option for some people, but I generally prefer timber as a starting point because of its life cycle costings and its carbon footprint. Obviously timber stores carbon, and we all remember the adverts, or most of us remember the adverts, that wood is good, and yes, it stores carbon. And also in terms of the costs and the environment and the general costs in its life cycle, which is from cradle to grave. So essentially from the beginning of its life as a material to the end of its life, those are the life cycle costings, and that takes into account everything in terms of transportation, impact on the environment, emissions of a particular material. And that's where timber out trumps steel. Even though steel can be recycled, it's a very intensive material to produce and also to recycle, whereas timber is not so much. Number 4, the overall footprint, particularly on small blocks. Blocks are getting smaller, we've spoken about this before, and an external timber frame wall is going to be about 90mm thick plus your cladding, whereas a blockwork wall is going to be 200mm thick plus your render. That means you're going to be saving around about 200mm on the width of a block. That 200mm can be crucial for your room sizes. So timber frame can be a really, really good option if you're very tight for space on a block. Number 5, the external aesthetic. You can have all kinds of looks for timber frame because you can apply so many different kind of cladding materials. You can go for something really traditional if you want, or you can go something really contemporary. So there are so many options, and you can get so many incredible aesthetic looks with timber frame because you can clad it with all sorts of things. Blockwork, you can paint it different colors, and you can create relief with different sort of like sort of facade details, but timber is just so flexible and versatile. I really love it for different styles. So external aesthetic, I think, is actually quite a big one. But there are some cons as well. I'll quickly touch on these. The initial cost. It takes a bit longer to build a timber frame, and also it's a bit more expensive because it takes longer and you've got carpenters building a stick-built home. The initial cost can be higher, but you need to offset that initial cost with how much money you're going to be saving over the lifetime of the home. So look at your return on investment over time and not just the initial cost, because there is a long-term cost involved, and if you can save so much money on your energy bills because you've built a more energy efficient home, then that really offsets that initial cost. Chemicals. Timber has to be treated with really unpleasant chemicals in order to be termite resistant. you have to do it unless you're using a hardwood, which is inherently termite resistant, which is far too expensive and is not sustainable either. Really, you're just going to have to accept that chemicals must be used. But even in a blockwork home, all of the internal stud walls, your roof trusses, architrave skirtings, that kind of thing, they're all timber anyway. So we're just saying that the external timber walls also would have to be treated. But remember, those chemicals are contained within that wall structure. It's not like a wall with paint on it and your VOCs, which can off-gas into a room. The chemicals are contained within that wall structure, so it's generally not too much of a big deal. And then the third downside, people talk about cyclone ratings and whether a timber frame is going to perform in a cyclone region. Well, yes, it does. That's a real myth, and I know I've heard some salespeople say, oh no, we don't build timber frame because it's not cyclone rated. That's absolute rubbish. Any structure must be cyclone resistant to the rating that is required, and it has to be certified by an engineer. But one thing that can happen, and I will give them this, is that, if things are flying around outside, you might get a bit of puncturing in your cladding. Never had that happen here, and we haven't really had any bad cyclones really in Cairns while I've been in this house. We've had lots of high winds though, and I suppose there is potential there that, the cladding could get damaged a little bit, but it's fairly easy to replace as well. So it's not too much of a big deal for me. The actual structure itself must be engineered and it must be certified just like a blockwork home does. So those are really my 5 key advantages and also 3 disadvantages to using timber. If you've got any further questions, by all means reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to help. And if I can't answer your questions, I will find someone who can. Have a great day. Speak to you soon. Bye.